Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Otsego City Council meeting. Tonight is Monday, February 28th. Audra, can you have the record show that all council members are present, along with our city administrator, our assistant city administrator, our attorney, our planner, and our engineer. At this time, I'll ask you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first item this evening is going to be a special presentation. We have Chief Eric Bullen from Albertville here. So I'm going to invite him up to the podium.
Such a dramatic walk.
You want some music?
No,
Yeah.
I don't need music, Tom. Who's my guy?
I'm your guy. You just
All right.
flip your hair
So-
around a little bit.
Do this. Do this and I want the next one. All right. Mayor, council, city staff, thanks for having me here for a couple minutes tonight. We'll go over our 2021 annual report. The mayor and council member Darkenwald have seen this, so I added a couple things just so it wasn't the same old, same old. So hopefully you catch those and we can hit the ground running. I'm ready. First couple pages are just our mission statement and vision statement. Everything we do as a fire department is geared off these things. So it's important for us to have, important for fire departments to look at moving forward. But I won't read them verbatim, otherwise we'd be here all night. Kevin told me I had to hurry up, so. And then we've got our core values, integrity, professionalism, honor, and dedication. Next. So here's the heavy stuff, our 2021 call volume. We had 569 calls in 2021. That's up from 414 the year before that and 418 the year before that. So we've seen about 107% increase since 2011. 10 years is a long way to go out, but last year when we were at 414, we still had a call volume increase of about 75% over the previous 10 years. So we'll get into more specifics about the big jump. We had our 100th call today, so we're still on that 600 pace pretty easily. So we'll see where the numbers shake out the rest of the year. There's our calls for service by month. Historically, we'd always been in the 35 range per month. So when we started hitting 50 pretty regularly in June last year, that's when we really started taking a look at our numbers. Comparing this year to last year, we had 22 calls last week in 7 days. So hence why we're at 100 calls already. We're kind of under that mark until the last 7 days hit. But I would expect our numbers, we had 50 calls in January, so we didn't really slow down at the first of the year, even with some changes that we made. So next slide. Calls for service by city, this breaks down, and then on the next page, we'll have kind of a 5-year total between the cities. So 56, 57% calls in Albertville, 35 or 36% in Otsego. That's been pretty close in that 36 to 38% range. The only difference that may involve 10 or 15 calls is that any border calls. So any calls on the interstate, I just code them as Albertville. Any calls on border roads like 70th Street or whatever, I just call it Albertville. I'm not going to play that well, they're on this side of the road or that side of the road. So there could be 15 to 20 calls that are different, even just including the highway calls. So some fluctuation there. There's the 5-year breakdown. So as you can see, somewhere in that 36, 38, up to 39% range has been pretty standard, even past that 5-year mark. That's a slide that breaks down our calls by date and time. You read across, that's by hour of the day. If you read down, that's by day of the week. I use this if we were ever to get into a duty crew staffing model or something like that, where our busiest times. Pretty standard for departments around the area. We're looking at that 2 to 8 time frame, 6 to 8 time frame is where the highest percentage of our calls are. The next slide will break it down into more usable. So that's the calls just for Otsego. Previous one was by date and time. Apparently we spend a lot of time up here at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning where we don't other in the overall fire territory. But if you add those up, that 2 to 8 time frame is one of the busiest. People are coming home from work on the weekends and summertime and Friday. People are leaving towns. There's more traffic on the road. So pretty standard and pretty similar for both cities. Next. So that I took a different approach to that same slide, broke it down. This is for all the calls in our fire territory, fire district. Kind of by weekday, during the weekday, weeknights, weekends, and overnights. We talked about this for a little while at our joint fire advisory subcommittee. I was surprised at the number of calls during the weekday, but I think with more people working at home, the mayor pointed out, there's just, maybe we don't have the transient community driving into the cities for work as much, and they're home more, so more changed from medicals or things like that, or they're on the road a little more. That number was a little higher than I expected. One thing that we do, which we've talked about before, is that we have 4 public works people on the fire department. So that really helps our staffing numbers during the day, as long as they're not doing a paving project or something like that. They're able to leave and come to the fire hall. So it really supplements our daytime response, even in personnel. And there's a slide in here that'll break down how many people we get on average for each type of call. And if you subtracted 4 from those during some of those daytime hours, we'd be having some struggles like other departments around us. And the same thing for the city of Otsego. Pretty similar numbers across the board. So compare and contrast those if you wish. Next. So there's statistics for all of our calls, details of 569. One thing that was lower this year is one of the things that I look at is overlapping calls. Overlapping calls are if we're at the fire hall for a call and a second call comes out. That's what drives us to get people that live farther out. Like, hey, you might make the second call, you might make a second truck. Historically, we've been in that 16 to 18% number over the last 3 or 4 years. So seeing single digits numbers is interesting, but it also doesn't mean it's more times that everyone's got to come back. We get 5 minutes. So we didn't get a cheap 60 calls that everyone was at the fire hall already. So one thing we look at. The other thing is the turnout time. We look at that average time being 6.5 minutes for a paid on call fire department to meet the standards that we're looking at. They were outlined in your report from 3 years ago now. So, and then our call time per call was down a little bit. In the mid 40s, we've been up as high as 55 or 58 minutes per call on average, just kind of depending on what type of calls we have for the year and how long they go in duration. So, next slide. We joked about this a little bit at our subcommittee meeting. This one shows we saved a lot of property. When you have 3 cooking fires in an apartment complex, sometimes those numbers even themselves out. So far this year, our numbers are not as happy, I would like to report, but it's these numbers do get reported to the state as part of their report on fire for every year. So it's something that NIFRS looks at as far as property loss and saved. So purely based on what's burning and when we get there. Here's a breakdown of all our calls. You can see where our medical calls fall, still by far the large majority of our calls. Usually the second category is that good intent call. And the next slide will break some of those down, but those include all of our canceled calls and things like that. So when we talk about looking at medical response or things like that, not only is it calls that we actually show up on, but it's just getting the guys started from home. They leave home for whatever reason, get to the fire hall or get canceled en route, still a call for service we got paged out for. So 25% is quite a bit. Other things in there, like you get dispatched to an intersection, you don't find anything, or it's a different location. So it's something that we keep an eye on. That question was raised at our council meeting. I did the annual report. That number historically seems pretty high. So there's the breakdown of all of the calls. So you can see in that category where they fall. All the 600 numbers are that good intent category. So you can see the canceled calls, 611 is the highest number of those. There's some other things that filter out through that, but that's call by call what we were dispatched to. One thing when you look at overall calls, so you'll see the number of actual building fires is much higher than were reported in each city. That's because 98% of our mutual aid calls or auto aid calls are for structure fires, whether it's in Dayton, Corcoran, or we go in and do an investigation in Monticello. So that's why our overall fires are in the 30s when our actual fires in both cities were in the 10s or 11s or 12s. So be like where these 25 fires go. We're not burying any calls under the carpet, but 98% of our mutual aid calls are structure fires outside of our fire area. The next one's Albertville. Same reports. You can probably skip through those on the next page pretty quick. And then there's the Otsego numbers. So major incident types for Otsego breaks down our medical calls. You can see the good intent calls in there too. Pretty similar percentages from what we see overall. And then the next page will detail out every single call we had in Otsego last year. There's the average number of personnel per call for that same category of calls. We have 32 paid on call firefighters, 33 including myself. So you figure out your percentages. We're turning out about 30%, 35% of the paid on call staff for every call. You'll get a flyer here or there. Maybe we got one and everyone's at the hall for training. So some year at 25 will pop up. You know, well, that looks pretty good. But if it's a single flyer and everyone's at training that night, it's a gimme if it was something like weather watch or something abnormal for the rest of the year. But keep an eye on that, realizing that's about 2/3 of our department that doesn't show up or isn't available for a lot of the calls. NIFRS requires COVID information for the last 2 years. So if you look at our 569 calls where COVID was suspected or confirmed, was a very small percentage of that. We have an administrative leave policy at the fire department to keep our department up and running. Last year, the number was a lot higher, but we did have 133 hours of call time that our personnel missed last year just because they were on administrative leave, just to keep them away for their 5 days or 10 days or whatever, just to realizing we're not their primary employer, but our function is to keep the fire department up and running. I'd have people close doors like 3 or 4 departments had to in 2020. There's our staffing as of the first of the year. Full-time fire chief, we are up to 32 members, tied for the highest we've ever been. We're authorized 33. We'll hope we keep it at 32 for a while. You'll see in a slide coming up, we did recognize our 2 chiefs, a deputy chief and assistant chief for 20 years of service at our last council meeting. So they could go at any point this year. I've told them that they can't. I told them they got like 5 years left, but we'll see. This is a good one to look at. Obviously, so this is the total time commitment for all of our members on average last year. The call hours purely is based on how many calls we do in a year, right? But our members average 205 hours of call time, 69 hours of training time, 28 hours of volunteer time. So those 32 people put in an average of 300 hours per person last year. So as we're talking about community surveys and how much time do you have available to give, you got 300 hours in there. So some of the training time includes initial training. So there's some skews in there. We did do some more volunteer time last year that we just couldn't do in 2020. I think our number was down in 300-400 hours. So we probably doubled what we do, but that's more of a normal year for us. So when you talk about time commitment of people that are doing other things, that 300 numbers is a pretty fair representation of what we're asking of our firefighters to do. There's the recognitions we talked about. 2 retirements last year with 54 years of service. So you see that when they leave. The service year winners down at the bottom, 2 chiefs that have another 5 years in them, as far as they know. Go to the next slide. There's our department awards. The one thing of note, so last year we had 414 calls. The year before that, 418, and our top caller last year made 392 calls. It's pretty phenomenal. Yes, he works from home. Yes, he's in sales, so he can bring his phone with and do all those other things. But when you see our department average is 32, and he made almost 7% of the calls, and he's not Otsego resident, so pitch him here on the council meeting because he's probably watching. I actually think he probably is, so we'll call him out for that. And then we had one officer promotion to fill out a board of officers at the very beginning of the year last year. Quick grant review. We've got, so Minnesota Board of Firefighter Training and Education has a reimbursement program for firefighter training. It's based on how many firefighters are in your department. They take their annual budget divided by the amount of firefighters in the state. It's actually over the biennium. So the first year you're getting $200 per firefighter. Second year you're given whatever's left divided up over that. At the end of the second year, if you've gone over your training or money, you can ask for redistribution money from the state. For whatever reason, not every department does that. So there's always a surplus. This year in 2021, we got everything that we asked to cover and more so. So we basically doubled our department reimbursement. Just we're going to train, and if we get it back, we get it back. The other thing the MBFT funds is the initial fire academy. So the Elk River Fire Academy is a reimbursement program. As long as they complete the academy and certify, the money comes back to us from the state. Also included in that are fire instructor and fire officer classes. So for a training budget of $6,000, we spent and got back $19,770 last year at no extra cost to us or the taxpayers or the fire contract. So it's been beneficial for us. A lot of the bigger cities will really take in that redistribution money, knowing that departments around the state don't want it. So it's been good for us. We go through the National Fire Safety Council. They solicit all of our local businesses. We've done this in St. Michael the last 4 years as part of the school district approach. So we have no out-of-pocket costs in the fire department for any of our pub ed materials or helmets or stickers or coloring books for kindergartners. Any of that's covered, and we actually probably have 5,000 or 6,000 in our account right now. So it's been very beneficial, and I don't do anything except send them the checks that come in. So it's been a benefit. We did put in a grant this year for FEMA. Our air compressor cascade containment fill station is on its last legs. The company that originally manufactured it 15 years ago is no longer in service or in business, so they're not building these things anymore, which would have known 16 years ago, right? The price for the replacement did come under $50,000, which considers us a micro grant as far as FEMA is concerned. Same application process, completely different pool of money. Based on the priority and age of the equipment, I think we've got, knock on wood, a pretty good chance of getting that grant this year. Problem is when we would get it, it's probably still another year out. So to be determined, but we are trying to get as many grants as we can to help fund the fire department. A couple other smaller grants, reimbursable grant for turnout gear for new firefighters, and then DNR volunteer fire system program, which we've had success with before to get wild and injured for firefighters. That's just some stuff we did last year. One of the updates, so we talked about the Alina medical call response at our subcommittee meeting. January 1st, we have tried to we've worked with Alina to tailor the medicals that we respond to. We're going on their 2 highest priority calls. We used to go to everything if they were out of the area in Buffalo. It seems like they're always out of the area because they have staffing issues just like everybody else. Working with Alina Dispatch, the Alina supervisor, Wright County Dispatch, we're getting dispatched to less of the things that we would just go stand at and provide zero service other than they were just we stand at the sheriff's office waiting for the ambulance to show up with zero life-changing stuff going on. It seems to have worked so far. Out of the 50 calls that we had in January, only half were medicals. Usually we're at 60-65%. So we actually had more fire calls by 1 than we had medical calls. And there's only been 4 medicals that I've pulled out for future review in case it starts happening over and over and over again. But definitely hasn't cut back on the calls that we're going to. Last night we got a respiratory arrest in Otsego. We were out there in 3 minutes and made some pretty life-changing interventions. So the things we're supposed to go to, we're still going to. I've heard Alina go on things that, or seen Alina go through town, or if the call comes out to the sheriff's office, we haven't gone to them. So I think it's going pretty well right now. We're just getting hammered with everything else. So I'm glad we don't have those on top of, like I said, I think there's 4 calls I have flagged for the first 2 months out of 100, which is better than I thought it was going to be.
So flagged as in you were dispatched from Wright County? Or Alina requested?
Alina, there was 2 that said Alina was coming from Buffalo. So I'm just keeping them just to keep her in. If we need to revisit with Brian or dispatch and say, I mean, a couple are gonna slip here or there. It's not 10 or 20, if it's 2 or 4, we can work around those things. So I think it's going pretty well so far. Like I said, with no detriment or no withholding of any life-saving thing that we're going to provide if we get there.
And maybe for the audience and for the rest of council, can you explain why you did make those changes?
Yeah,
your
so
firefighters?
starting in June of last year, we were getting calls that, Sarge can attest to this, we were getting calls that, so if a line is out of St. Michael area, we were getting every medical. If they're coming from Buffalo or Annandale, it didn't matter where. A lot of those calls didn't require emergent transport. Alina wasn't going emergent, they're just going routine. That information didn't get passed on to us, so we're going lights and siren to something Alina's just coming to transport on. Starting in June of last year, I started tracking those calls different. So if Alina got somewhere first before we did, or we just purely provided people and said, hey, we're going to stay in here until the ambulance gets there. Started tracking that on a 365-day rolling average and looking at just those numbers, taking a small percentage of the canceleds that are a part of that. I felt that we could potentially see a 30% decrease in our medical calls. And 100% of those on things that we weren't doing any life-saving interventions on. We were just providing our rescue truck at whatever hour of the day just to stand by. Obviously, and it's happened over the last couple of weeks, if calls progress, they come in as this, but they're not really this, they're this. We're still going. We're getting dispatched. And I don't think in any delay in time, because a lot of those things are developed through dispatch, not necessarily the sheriff's office arriving and saying, no, this isn't this. This is completely something different. So I'll pull out my February numbers. With as busy as we've been, it's gonna be interesting to see, but I know just by entering calls, we've entered less where we just provide manpower apparatus. We've actually done something. We've got, and that's what, when we have call volumes like this, that's what keeps the drive going in people, right? Like when I saw that we had 50 calls in January and 26 were fire calls, 6 people in a fire truck doing fire department stuff. They'll keep showing up for that. It's the stuff where, you know, are we really needed on this? Maybe we don't cover this call, maybe, right? So I'm trying to weed those out to try and get those average number of personnel, keep that as high as we can. So I'm hoping that's gonna work out. We'll take a look at the numbers over the last couple of months and run those later this week and see where we're at.
And that's more in line than with the other fire departments we have in the city.
Yes, very, yeah, we were responding on a lot more medicals by percentage, which is fine, than the other 2 fire departments were. And now that a line of protocols stretched out for the whole city, because the line of dispatches for both Center Care and for Elk River ambulance. So yes, very good point. Thank you for making a very good point there.
Yes.
I think that's the last. Anything on the other side? Yep, we're looking forward to 2022. We're 2 months in, 10 months to go. I did forward Adam, the mayor saw the report from the legislative auditor on EMSRB and ambulance response.
Yeah.
The State Chief Association has taken a very keen interest. They've hired a lobbyist just to focus on this issue themselves at the state capitol this year and going forward. So stay tuned. I think it'll be interesting. EMSRB just named their new director 2 weeks ago. He's moving from Pennsylvania. So he's going to land 2 feet into this whole storm too. So stay tuned. It'll be interesting. Probably good TV watching at some point if you're really excited about it. So that's all I have in my PowerPoint. If there's any questions from council.
Any
definitely take them.
questions for
Mayor.
Jeff?
Hi, Chief. I have 2 questions for you. One, when you and your other firefighters go to every houses and when there is a fire, are all smoke alarms working? Are they all working properly, do you think?
I would say we go to more calls where there's malfunctions, where nothing's going on besides that, than actual fires where they're not. We get more nuisance calls, so we work on education through newsletters and things like that. We go to a lot of smoke alarm and CO calls where the detectors are 20 years old, 16 years old. Batteries never change, things like that. The emergency ones that we get, percentage wise, the majority of them are working and installed. Be interesting to see if there's a correlation there, but by far call numbers, we definitely get more of the nuisance things. That's public education helps us in that facet, right? The CO alarms, and it's been going off for 3 days, but I'm going to call it 2 in the morning versus right 5 o'clock when I get home from work. We saw a lot of those at the beginning of the year this year too. Wintertime, obviously more because windows are closed, furnaces are running, things like that. So the emergent ones, we've definitely been warned by smoke detectors that have been working, but we don't see anything like every fire we go to, all their stuff's not working. We get a lot more of the nuisance things than otherwise, for sure.
Okay, you mentioned CO because I saw you had 3 malfunctionings. I know there's probably training on that. And then with training, what's the best way to bring that up for training? I know we have the festivals and stuff, touch of trucks, whatnot. Like a lot of kids help. Hey, mom, dad, it's great to do these 9-volt batteries for the smoke alarms. Plus, what else has been out there for the COs? I know if you look in the back, there's usually a 10-year lifespan on them, but I've been the victim of that going, wow, oh great, the CO detector's coming. They come out, they go, nope, 11 years. Okay.
Right. You know, we've passed stuff up to Otsego too for the newsletters. I mean, we use the same provider you guys do for newsletters, right? So you get all these pretty pictures and then like, oh, there's a smoke alarm and you go right by it, right? It's those type of things. A lot of our interactions are done just on a case-by-case basis with the residents that we go see. I mean, definitely we could look at some pamphlets or things like that. I mean, 10 years for a smoke alarm, and it's from date of manufacture, not date of installation. Those are sometimes different. And we tell people 3 to 5 years on CO detectors now, because sometimes those sensors don't last very long. Builders for a while put in the combination ones, right? So the CO alarm's going off as a CO call or as a fire alarm call, they sound different. But at 2 in the morning and you got your kids screaming and stuff like that, you're not trying to figure out, was that like 3 chirps or 1 chirp, or is it saying fire, right? It's just an alarm. It's larger cities struggle with just educational announcements on this stuff too. The state fire marshal does a really good job of trying to blast social media with these things. Daylight savings, check your batteries, right? Like that, pretty much everyone knows that. Then we'll get the CO and we'll get the call like 2 days after daylight savings where their fire alarms chirping. So it's a constant battle. I don't know if there's a perfect way to do it. We post things on social media constantly, get like 2 or 3 likes, right? Like, yeah, whatever, I'll call, right? It's one of those battles that I think we'll always face.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Eric, I've got a couple questions here. Just out of curiosity, when it says, under Otsego here, breakdown of major incident types, building fire, does that mean homes, commercial, anything, or is it specific to something?
Any structure, so it could be shed, could be house, could
Okay.
be not vehicle,
Okay.
not trash or rubbish.
Okay.
Like our 2 hot load fires last year, only in Otsego. So yes, some enclosed building of some kind, anywhere from a sauna to a shed to a
Okay.
house or
Okay.
business.
Perfect, thank you. And last question here is just curious on just some of the medicals that you're going on. Whatever you can share, what are you seeing out there as far as medicals? I'm just curious.
I mean, our 2 easily highest are difficulty breathing and chest pains, which
Okay.
is probably the same across the metro.
Okay.
We definitely saw a downtick for a while in 2020, people even just calling 911 for fear of.
Right.
Now I think we're seeing it the other way, to the point where clinic doctors and things like that are having their patients say, I need to go to the hospital, and the doctor having to say, just because I bring you an ambulance doesn't mean you're going to jump in line, because you're not a priority right now.
Mhm.
You're going to go sit and wait just like you would if you drive it.
Mhm.
We don't get a lot of those. Ambulance may see more, but by far it's difficulty breathing and chest pains is what we get. Those are obviously high priority for a line of dispatch
Right.
as well.
Thank you.
And in the wintertime, we get a lot of falls.
Any other questions or comments? Great, thank you for coming
Thank
this
you.
evening.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks,
great
Eric.
night. Yep.
Thanks, chief.
All right. We are now at the open forum portion of the meeting. This is where you can come to the podium, state your name and address, and limit comments to 5 minutes or less. Would anyone like to speak at this time? All right. We will move on to consider our agenda for approval. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add or delete at this time? Tom?
Madam Mayor, I'll move the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Right. Motion by Tom, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item is our consent agenda. A motion would be in order.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Brittany.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as written.
My second.
Motion by Brittany, seconded by Jeff. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item is item 4.1, Quick Trip. I will turn this over to Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. The city received an application from Quick Trip Incorporated to develop a convenience store with motor fuel station and car wash at the northwest corner of Parish Avenue, County Road 42 and 87th Street. The application was processed in accordance with the zoning ordinance and the state statute, including a public hearing held by the Planning Commission on February 7th, followed by presentation to the City Council on 14th of February at your last meeting. At the meeting, the item was tabled and city staff was directed to provide findings of fact for the city council to review to deny the application. So the request for council action that you have before you this evening includes the findings of fact as initially recommended by staff to the planning commission for approval of the request, and then the requested findings to deny the application based on the considerations that were outlined in the planning report presented both to the planning commission and the city council. So this item is for your action this evening.
Thank you, Dan. All right. Council, any questions, comments? Tom?
And Mayor, Dan, did Quick Trip follow up with you after the last meeting at all?
Mayor, the only contact we had with Mr. George, who's present here this evening, was they requested that we forward the draft findings that would be presented this evening.
Did you hear anything after that?
No.
Any other questions? Tom?
Madam Mayor, quick question for Dave. Dave, can the applicant come to the podium now and talk at all?
If you want to have additional information from them, I mean, it's not a formal public hearing, but if you need additional information from them or have questions, you can ask those questions, yeah.
To the applicant, I have a question for you.
Can we get your name and address for the record?
Dean George, 1626 Oak Street, La Crosse, Wisconsin, 54602. On behalf of Quick Trip, thank you.
Just a question, you did receive the additional findings of fact?
Yes, Dan emailed them to us on Friday, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
And those are the findings A through I believe.
I believe Dan is looking.
Scrolling down. Hey,
Yes, that's correct.
Did you have any questions on those findings?
well, so I guess, well, thank you for bringing me up and inviting me to ask a question. I guess it's kind of important, not so much for us now, but for kind of the owner of this particular piece of land to kind of have some direction moving forward on, what the thought out there should be, what they need to put in there, because we kind of get the feeling that it's more driven because there's, kind of the saturation of convenience gas in the area. Are they going to run into the same problem if another coffee shop or another grocery store or another bank kind of wants to go in the area? Are they going to run into those same issues that we're kind of struggling with right now? And that's kind of an important thing for us to bring up and maybe have a discussion about.
And perhaps in the future, we could have that discussion about that.
Dan?
Mayor, that'd be a discussion between city staff and the property owner on any potential development they may bring forward. Same as we had discussions concerning this specific development. So the request before you tonight is Quick Trips. You should limit your conversation to anything pertaining to their request.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Nope, that was all I had. Thank you.
Tom?
Madam Mayor, if there are no further questions, I'll make a motion to deny application for Quick Trip number 1204 in accordance with findings of fact and decision as presented.
Second.
Motion by Tom, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to item 4.2, Boulder Pass Second Edition.
Thank you, Mayor. This application from MI Homes is for final plat approval for the second addition to Boulder Pass, which is located at the northwest corner of County Road 38, 70th Street and Quad A Avenue. The property is guided by the comprehensive plan for low to medium density residential uses. It's zoned R5 single and two family district. They're proposing single family lots, which are a permitted use within that zoning district. To the north and south of the property, there are undeveloped parcels both within and outside of the sewer district. There's also the adjacent Emerson Point neighborhood, as well as the Point Townhomes, and to the west is the Boulder Creek subdivision. With their application, they received preliminary plat approval way back in 2009. It was done back then so that they were able to excavate the property then for mining purposes and basically bring the property to the grade that they're now developing at as basically an interim use. The final plat that's proposed includes 25 single family lots and one outlot for future phase of development to the west of these lots. As part of this final plat, they'll extend 71st Street from the access out to Quad A Avenue, basically that kind of southwest going street in that direction. They provided construction plans for grading of the property as well as completion of the streets and utilities that have been reviewed by the city engineer. And you have the information regarding his review in your packet. The council previously held a public hearing at your last meeting on February 14th. Consider vacation of existing drainage and utility easements that exist over the property being final platted. That action would occur then tonight concurrent with the final plat by resolution that's also included as part of your packet. Park dedication requirements for Boulder Pass were set up to be a cash fee in lieu of land with the preliminary plat. However, looking at how the area is developed and some of the challenges the city has had with regards to trail crossings and pedestrian crossings across major roads, such as Quad A Avenue, city staff recommended and the developer added it to their construction plans, a trail from the intersection of 70th Street and Quad A Avenue, basically to the northeast corner of the property, just off the image. That will provide access for these residents to move forward to the north to a street intersection that would continue then north along the trail system towards County Road 42. Also take them from the neighborhood south to the trail that's currently on the north side of County Road 38. So we thought this was an improvement to the pedestrian access and circulation within the area and benefit the overall park system. The developer receives credit for the construction cost from the cash fees in lieu of land that they would pay as part of the number of lots being final platted. And then finally, the city attorney's office drafted a development agreement memorializing the approvals, providing for the construction of the public improvements and providing all fees and securities as required by the subdivision ordinance. So city staff is recommending adoption of resolution vacating those existing drainage and utility easements, approval of the final plat subject to the 15 conditions stated in the findings of fact and decision, and then adoption of resolution 2220 approving the development contract as drafted. Emily Becker from MI Homes is online if there are any questions.
Would the applicant wish to comment?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Emily Becker, 5354 Parkdale Drive, Unit 100, St. Louis Park, 55416. I don't really have any comments at this time, but if you have any questions, I would be happy to help them or happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. All right, council, any questions? Tom?
Madam Mayor, given that this is Boulder Pass and I've recused and abstained in the past on voting on this, I will also be abstaining and recusing myself.
Okay. Audra, can you have the record show that? Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I just have a
Yes.
quick question for Dan, and I think you've said this and I've read it, but I just want to confirm that this is the final plat for this Boulder Creek.
So there should be at least one more phase of development just to the west of these lots. So
Okay.
this street here still is yet to be constructed.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor,
Jeff?
I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
Motion to adopt resolution 2029-19 vacating existing drainage and utility easements. Approve the Boulder Pass Second Edition Final Plat subject to the conditions stated on the findings and facts and decision as presented. And adopt resolution 2022-20 approving a development contract.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Jeff, seconded by Brittany. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to our engineering, 5.1, the MnDOT Local Partnership Program funding.
Thank you, Mayor. If you recall, last year we got some funding from MnDOT to work along their Trunk Highway 101 local partnership program. And what we had proposed was putting in flashing left-hand turn signals at the ramps to keep traffic moving along. And we were awarded that. That money isn't available till 2024, but the city can advance fund it using our own funds and then get reimbursed later. So at this point, we're ready to submit plans, but with that, we also need to submit a resolution passed by the city. That's what we're asking from you tonight, is a resolution that you would enter into agreement with MnDOT, and they have the agreement number, but they don't have the agreement for you to review. So staff will look at that once we receive it after they've approved plans. I think it's more of a formality for MnDOT to know that the city is going to pay their portion of it, and they understand that you have a portion to pay. In the packet, you have the engineer's estimate of $360,000 for the project. MnDOT's covering up to 150,000 on this one. It shows 144,000 based on the percentages of the legs that MnDOT owns. And then Otsego's portion is 36,000 for the construction based on the percentages. These are estimates, but then we also have to pay for all the design time that goes into it. And that's about 22,000 or so at this point. And then the county is paying their share of the legs, and it will have to enter into agreement with them once we get closer to the bids and get a better engineer's estimate at that point. But right now, we're just looking for resolution allowing the mayor and the clerk to sign the agreement once it is received.
All right. Any questions for Ron on this? Ron, I have one question. Just, we have the county listed here, and have they seen these numbers too? I just don't want this to be a surprise that,
These numbers were actually put together by the county.
okay, perfect. I just
Yes.
know that sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah,
work
we're
out.
not well versed in traffic signals, especially on 101 ramps. So we requested they help us with the engineering estimate. And they provided that.
Madam Mayor.
Jeff.
Can I ask a question to Sergeant Holtzman about this?
Sure.
Thank you, Sergeant. When it comes to these flashing yellow lights, where you've seen, how is traffic, how do they behave other than, okay, great, we can turn, other than waiting for the red arrow to green arrow? How have you seen traffic behave when we have a flashing yellow? Did they ever impede oncoming traffic? Is it worse? Is it better? What do you think of this?
Anything that we can do to increase the predictability of traffic flow is going to be beneficial for the safety of any intersection. Kind of a misconception is, a distracted driving is going to be the number one factor for the cause of accidents. As I bring up to the Public Safety Commission, is the number one thing is actually how drivers interact with others, in the sense of, is their intent predictable? Essentially stating a turn signal is actually more important than cell phones, technically, right? Statistically. So with intersections like this, that flashing yellow actually does have a pretty substantial effect versus a solid yellow. In that a solid yellow, sometimes people think that they have the right of way and will make those turns. The flashing yellow, I think the studies have shown that gets the human brain to recognize that they don't have the right of way. So oddly enough, something as simple as a steady yellow versus a blinking yellow actually does have a pretty dramatic effect
on how the human brain reacts with that sort of intersection and paying attention to oncoming traffic, vice versa. So as it relates to our city, or even our area, I would say it would be hard to look at it from a statistical standpoint. I've found that those intersections typically have a better rate of traffic crashes where it's safer. I'll use that term, I guess. But like I said, anything that you can do to increase the predictability of the intersection is going to have a huge benefit for not only the traffic flow, but the safety of it too.
Thank you.
I have one
Yes,
question.
Tina.
Ron, quick question for you. Was there a reason this wasn't done when the lights were put in?
They didn't really support flashing yellows. So they're sort of a new feature in Minnesota. I think that probably within the last 10 years. Of course, that was put in 2007. So I don't think it was just not thought about at that point. And they found that they worked well. So then they started putting them throughout the state.
Thank you.
Tom?
Madam Mayor, yeah, back in, it was 2003, 2004 when they were doing the engineering to put all this stuff in, and they actually built it in 2006 and 2007. These interchanges. And I think at that time, they didn't allow any blinking lights at their intersections that we were aware of. This was before I was on the council, on the planning commission. And we don't have 39 in here because it's a spooey.
Correct.
Madam Mayor, one last question. Dave,
Yes.
you've reviewed the resolution?
I've reviewed the resolution. I've not reviewed the contract because we don't have it yet. So.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
I'll
Tom.
make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-21, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into MnDOT agreement number 1048186 for the installation of flashing left-hand turn signals for signals associated with Trunk Highway 101 interchanges at CASA 36, CASA 38, CASA 42, otherwise known as Improvement Project SP 8606-35.
Nice.
Motion by Tom, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, moving on to city council reports. First would be Heritage Preservation Commission. Brittany?
Madam Mayor, I do not have anything tonight.
All right. Next would be Park and Rec Commission. We had HKGI on, which we are reviewing the proposed improvements at Carrick's Landing, also School Knoll Park. I think that's about it. That's it, that we have them present. So those projects will be moving along. We've been budgeting for those, so those will come back to the council when bidding process would open, and we need your support on that. So next is Planning Commission. Tom?
Nothing.
Okay, Public Safety, Tina?
Nothing.
All right. We also are under City Council reports and updates. Does anyone have anything? Moving on to staff reports and updates. We'll start with Audra.
Thank you, Mayor Stockham. Just a quick update, the redistricting of the voting precincts is underway. We've got our final lines where they'll be, and we are working with Ron to establish the new precinct sites. So we'll be bringing back a map at a future meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder, there's an open house scheduled for the 2022 street renewal project on March 10th from 5 to 8 p.m. In this building here. So we have noticed the quorum of the council just in case you are interested in attending. We don't have to worry about that. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Sabrina.
Thank you, Mayor. We are in the middle of the utility billing recruitment, so we should at the next meeting have hopefully an applicant to be able to be presented to City Council. And then we should also be getting results to staff and city council on the employee survey that we conducted in comparison to the 2021 survey as well. And that's all.
Thank you. Dave?
Mayor, maybe just a comment and follow up to Member Darkenwall's question about that resolution. I would say that the resolution would authorize the mayor and the city clerk to execute the contract, assuming it's substantially similar to what was outlined in the staff report. It's a little unusual for the state to ask us to approve a contract we haven't seen yet, but I understand we want to cooperate with them. We believe it's going to be as they say. I would just say if the contract turns out to be wildly different from what was indicated in the staff report, then you probably have to bring it back before the council for additional consideration.
All right.
Thank you. Ron?
No updates, Mayor.
Dan?
Mayor, tomorrow, actually it's live now, the survey and mapping website for the comprehensive plan update is available. The link is on the front page of the city's website. Thanks to Audra, and Sabrina is going to blast it out over Facebook and Instagram tomorrow. So hopefully residents will check it out and provide input as part of the comprehensive plan process. In terms of planning commission, we do have a meeting next Monday to consider 2 industrial projects, one on the Trunk Highway 101 side, the Project Ollie development, and one on the west side, interstate development off Cadler Avenue, plus a concept plan for VIP Autoplex at 70th Street and Kittredge Parkway.
Perfect. Next will be Sergeant Altman's.
Couple things. I am glad that I have some deputies that really show some initiative in town. I have 2 deputies, Deputy Fury and Deputy Rice, that we have 2 new apartment complexes that are going to be, up and running here relatively soon. It's really nice to have these deputies go out and start the communication and start the relationship with them. Any apartment that comes into any area, as far as law enforcement goes, or emergency response in general, is we need to open that relationship up with them. We need to have access. We need to know what's going on. If worst case scenarios to best case scenarios, it's nice to have access at door codes and understanding how many people are going to be there for all sorts of different things. And that even applies. It goes all the way down to the an ambulance responding. Are they going to be able to have access through the information that we have? The deputies are going to try to act as a liaison, as if there are going to be problems or any trends that are coming up because of that we can know right away and address them right away. So it was really nice that they, without even me having to say anything, they just immediately went over there and started getting the line of communication open with them. And we're kind of doing the sergeant is okay. I'm like, have at it. Yeah, absolutely. Let's get that going. So
Absolutely.
kind of nice to take that off my plate. These are 2 deputies that work during the day, so they do a little bit better of a job of being able to literally show up and go talk to them during business hours versus me trying to do the email thing a day and a half later. We do have a lot of movement kind of going on at the sheriff's office in general. I know our Facebook page had it today. One of our captains is retiring after 35 years. Anytime a captain leaves, that's kind of like our 3rd level down, so to speak, from the top. That creates a lot of movement and a lot of promotions and a lot of changes to the department. So there's kind of a handful of things that are happening all the way down to we have our SWAT team has to recruit a couple more people, just kind of how everything shakes out. So I'm trying to get some of the guys that work at Otsego, trying to get them into our process. It is a pretty strenuous, not only a process, but quite a commitment for them as far as their careers go and everything that comes with that. So again, trying to push that, it's a benefit to the city. I mean, as I've been on it for about a decade now, having that sort of experience and training and being able to apply it with any type of call that I might take day to day versus just an actual SWAT team call out. It's beneficial to the city and everybody that's here and their partners that are in the area. And then just kind of topical, because the fire department was here, Albertville Fire. One of the things that I do kind of preach with the deputies that are working in the city is any sort of fire call, any sort of medical call, is I actually require them to go unless there's a specific articulable fact as to why a medical call would be detrimental to that deputy, i.e. there's some sort of airborne disease or something like that, that would be a threat to that deputy. I'm not going to have them go to that, but everything else, I'm going to make them respond. Now there is that idea of Do I want a deputy just kind of standing there twiddling his thumbs, waiting for an ambulance? Well, certainly that's not what I want them to do. However, there are always things that can be addressed in the situation. For example, we have calls that'll happen in town where the deputy may show up. It's as basic of a medical call as there is, and there isn't anything medically for the deputy to do. However, there may be issues that need to be addressed on the social services side. Is there abuse going on? Is there neglect going on? Is there some sort of safety plan that needs to come into place for this particular resident of our city? Well, the deputy needs to be the one be there to address that and initiate that. A lot of the time, somebody from Alina or Centricare, whomever, they can't initiate that, or they can't even investigate it. They're so focused on treatment of the patient. So I have them go to every single one and try to address those sort of things on every single medical call. We have thousands of medical calls, so you can only imagine how many times we said, well, there's nothing I can do. We're not going to go to that. Well, no, there very well may be something that can be done. They need to kind of, once the medical side of it has been addressed and the life-saving efforts or whatever the case is have ended, or we don't need to do any sort of thing, take a look around. What do we need to be addressing here? And all the deputies know to do that. Similar, we had a fire here within the last week. Again, maybe something that the deputies show up, well, it's out of control, it's fires, I can't use my fire extinguisher. And so I'm sitting there maybe twiddling my thumbs waiting for a fire truck, or maybe the fire department has everything under control. We're sitting there. One of the biggest trends that we've seen in the last couple of years here that I'm telling the deputies to show up is, okay, they have the scene under control, or they're handling the scene. You guys are kind of sitting there kind of going, what do we do now? The deputies need to get out to the road and pay attention, because I would say probably every fourth car that goes by, they have their phone up and they're Snapchatting all the flashing lights in the fire. And so one of the particular fires that we had recently, we've got 3 different fire stations, fire departments, all showing up with personnel, trucks, etc., an ambulance that shows up for a standby. And we have all this parked on the road, and we're all kind of taking up all this area, and they're walking back and forth in a dark scene across the road. And I got people driving by at 30 miles an hour with their phones out the way. The deputies need to be out there paying attention to that and putting a curb to it. Whatever we need to do, whether it's citations or there needs to be a roadside lecture, whatever the case is, these scenes need to be safe for these guys. And as the fire chief said, it's hard enough for these guys to have to come in at 2 o'clock in the morning when they got to go to work, much less then having people not paying attention and they want to get a good Snapchat story or Instagram reel, whatever the case is, and they're not paying attention. So there's always something for a deputy to be doing on these scenes, and they are told to go to these scenes and find something to do. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks again.
All right. This time a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
Motion by Tom, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The meeting is ended. Thank you all for attending via Zoom and also in the audience this evening.
Thank you. Tom, what happened?